It's the night of September 22nd, 2015. In the UK city of Bristol, 29-year-old Mark Van Dongan is asleep in his bed, wearing nothing but his underpants. For the first time in a long time, he feels like he can finally relax. After a turbulent 5-year relationship, Mark has finally broken up with 48-year-old Belina Wallace. He's met someone else. It's over. Or at least, it should be. But tonight, Mark is staying in Belina's flat, just one more time, and it will turn out to be the biggest mistake of his life. In the early hours of the morning, as Mark is fast asleep, Belina quietly fills up a glass with sulfuric acid. Moments later, Mark wakes up to his ex-girlfriend standing over him and laughing. She says, "If I can't have you, no one can." And then, with one quick motion, she throws the acid directly into Mark's face. The neighbours are jolted awake by an awful racket, and as they pull back their curtains to see what's going on, they see Mark on the street, staggering, hands clamped over his face, screaming in agony. The police are called, and Mark is rushed to hospital. His family are then called in too. But when Mark's father, Kees, looks for his son, he can't find him. He asks the doctors where to go, and the doctors just point him back to a room he's already checked. Kees had actually seen his son in one of the beds. He just didn't recognise him, and it's no wonder why. A quarter of Mark's body has been badly burned. Most of the damaged skin has been surgically removed. He's completely blind in his left eye and almost blind in his right. His lower left leg has been amputated, and above all, his face has melted beyond recognition. When Mark finally sees himself in the mirror, he screams, "Kill me now. If my face is going to be left looking like this, I don't want to live." His injuries are so bad that even the senior detective on his case keeps the images under lock and key. Altogether, Mark spends 11 months in intensive care, and from there, things only get worse. By November 2016, doctors realise that Mark will need round-the-clock care for the rest of his life. He regains his speech, but is forever paralysed below the neck. He's diagnosed with depression. He becomes agitated, angry, even sometimes abusive towards staff. He can't feed himself, wash himself, or even use the toilet alone. Most days, Mark says he wants to die, and eventually, his wish is granted. At his request, a small group of friends and family secretly take Mark out of the UK and into Belgium, and there he chooses to end his life through euthanasia. And so on January 2nd, 2017, the procedure is completed and Mark's story, however tragic, is over. But for the rest of the UK, this is just the beginning. 2017 will go on to become one of the worst years in the country's history for acid attacks. And it would open the world's eyes to what's been going on in other countries for decades. And sadly, Mark Van Dongan's case was just part of a much bigger, much older story of acid violence. Looking at the newspapers, acid might seem like a modern weapon, but these sorts of attacks have actually been around for centuries. In Europe, particularly the 18th and 19th centuries, these attacks were known as vitriol attacks. Vitriol was an early form of sulfuric acid. In 18th century England, during the Industrial Revolution, it was being produced on a massive scale and was relatively easy to get hold of. Back then, vitriol throwing was often framed as a crime of passion. Newspapers reported stories of lovers and spouses turning on each other in moments of rage. Quite often, women were throwing acid at husbands who were having affairs, or even at their partners' mistresses. At one point, vitriol attacks were happening so often that in February 1834, a local Glasgow newspaper wrote the following. "The crime of throwing vitriol has, we grieve to say, become so common in this part of the country as to become almost a stain on national character." But national character was an understatement. The violence even crossed the Atlantic. In 1865, the New York Times reported that a jealous husband had been arrested for disfiguring his wife with acid after threatening to spoil her figure. In the decades that followed, though, acid attacks were more often tied to the global south and particularly countries in South Asia. Deep-rooted gender inequality, weak law enforcement, and easy access to industrial-grade acid meant that these attacks were, and still are, happening all too often in that part of the world. In Bangladesh, for instance, between 1999 and 2013, more than 3,500 people were attacked with acid. Most of the victims, women. In India, meanwhile, according to the Acid Survivors Trust, around 1,000 acid attacks are reported every year. Many more are likely never reported, though, because the victims are scared of retaliation, or they simply don't believe justice is possible. Acid attacks have also been reported in places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, and Uganda. But in the past decade, these attacks have been making their way back to the Western world too. In 2017, the UK had one of the highest per capita rates of acid-based violence anywhere in the world. It was a bad year. A wave of random acid attacks hit London in a short space of time. In April 2017, Arthur Collins, the ex-boyfriend of a British reality TV star, threw acid inside a packed nightclub in East London. 600 people fled in panic and 14 people were injured. Collins was later sentenced to 20 years in prison. Then, in June 2017, Jamil Mukhtar and his cousin, aspiring model Risham Khan, were attacked with acid while sitting in their car. Their injuries were described as life-changing. And then it happened again. A month later, in July, 2 teenagers on a moped launched 5 unprovoked acid attacks on people across London, all in less than 90 minutes. One victim, again, was left with life-changing injuries. There's a reason why these acid attack injuries are so often described like this, and that's because acid doesn't burn you like fire does. It's not hot. Instead, acid reacts with the water in your cells and kills them. If you're hit by an acid attack, the liquid can quite literally eat through your body layer by layer. First it burns through the skin, then the fat beneath it, then the muscle, and in some cases it even reaches the bone. When acid attacks are aimed at the face, as so many of them are, the damage can be catastrophic. Acid quickly burns away the eyelids and lips, it dissolves the nose too, causing it to collapse, and it deforms the ears. This can potentially leave the victim deaf. It can also destroy their eyes and lead to blindness. And unless it's quickly washed away or neutralised, acid can keep burning and burning for a long time, leaving third-degree burns that take months to heal. And even when they do heal, the thick scar tissue tightens up and pulls the victim's skin out of shape. This means that their eyelids, or whatever's left of them, can be sealed shut and their mouths may no longer open properly. And if the acid has splashed over the victim's body, the scars can fuse their chin and chest together. In women, acid burns to the chest can destroy their breast tissue entirely. The fumes from the acid can also damage the victim's lungs and cause swelling in the neck that, in extreme cases, constricts the airways and causes them to suffocate. Even long after the attack, survivors face constant medical risks. The damaged skin is highly vulnerable to infection, and many people need dozens of surgeries just to regain their basic functions. For most survivors, though, the physical injuries are just the beginning of the nightmare. Acid attacks can destroy a person's whole identity. Many survivors are left blind or with severe damage to their face and hands, making even simple everyday tasks incredibly difficult. Some, like Mark Van Dongan, have had to rely on family members or carers just to get through the day. Many more are simply unable to work, partly because of their disabilities, but also due to discrimination when it comes to hiring. Severe acid burns can scare other people, and if the victim's job is public-facing, you can see how things could get complicated. Sana Rasmi, for instance, was a 22-year-old waitress in Cambodia when she began an affair with an Air Force colonel. When the relationship was discovered, the colonel's wife arranged the attack, holding Rasmi down and pouring 2 bottles of hydrochloric acid over her face, arms and back. Most of Rasmi's hair was burned away, her face was left covered in deep red scars. Afterwards, Sun Rasmi tried to rebuild her life by running a small food stall, but customers stayed away. She later told the Washington Post, "People are too frightened and disgusted by my condition to do business with me." Unsurprisingly, studies show that acid attack survivors often suffer from depression, anxiety and PTSD. Some are afraid to leave the house, terrified of how people will react to their appearance. Others can't bear to look at themselves in the mirror, and some no longer want to live. And in some parts of the world, such as South Asia, acid attack victims are often abandoned by partners or rejected by their communities. This again, especially true for women. But in the end, all of that is the acid attacker's goal. An acid attack is so brutal because it's not meant to kill. The attacker wants their victim to suffer for the rest of their life. That said, the motivations behind these attacks can vary a lot. As we saw in the UK, some are random, but other times the same patterns come up again and again. One of the most common motives is personal conflict, and that includes rejection, jealousy, and even property disputes. Acid is often used as revenge when someone feels humiliated, abandoned, or when they've been broken up with, just like in Mark Van Dongan's case. In January 2017, for instance, around the same time that Mark ended his life, another high-profile acid attack was making the headlines in Italy. The ex-boyfriend of Miss Italy finalist Jessica Notaro stalked and harassed her for months. Even after a restraining order was issued, he waited for an opportunity and then doused her with hydrochloric acid. The attack, conducted in pure revenge, disfigured Jessica and blinded her in one eye. Jessica's ex-boyfriend wanted to make her, quote, unlovable. Acid attacks have also been carried out over child custody disputes. In 2019, in the UK, a man was jailed for 16 years after plotting what a judge called a monstrous acid attack on his own 3-year-old son. The man, along with a group of others, sprayed sulfuric acid at the boy inside a shop while he and his mother were buying a birthday present. The boy suffered serious burns to his face and arm, and he will be scarred for life. The goal of all of this was to win custody by making it look like the child's mother had failed to protect him. Some acid attacks are also driven by racism, religious hatred, or political motives. In November 2018, for instance, Ukrainian anti-corruption activist Katerina Handziuk died from complications caused by an acid attack. Katerina, who was exposing police corruption, was doused in a litre of sulfuric acid as she left her Ukrainian hometown. More than 30% of her body was burned, and although she underwent 11 surgeries, she sadly did not survive. In some parts of the world, women have also had acid thrown on them for refusing marriage proposals, rejecting sexual advances, or simply going to school. 32-year-old Priti Singh from Meerut, India, was attacked twice with acid by her in-laws in 2024, simply for giving birth to a girl, not a boy. And worst of all, in some countries, the victims themselves are sometimes blamed for the attack. DW News reported one such incident in 2014. One night, while 24-year-old Farida from Bangladesh was sleeping, her husband threw acid over her and then locked the door. He did this because Farida had threatened to leave him over his gambling. Later, she said in a statement, "Society is so cruel. When people hear that my husband threw acid at me, they immediately assume that I am a bad person." Acid attacks are also more recently carried out by gangs, especially common in the UK. But things work a little differently here compared to many countries in the global south. In the UK, men are far more likely to be the victims. Government figures, in fact, show that men are around 11 times more likely than women to be attacked with acid. Overall, the violence is mostly men targeting other men, and this is because, experts say, acid attacks in the UK are more often tied to gang conflicts than personal or romantic vendettas. They leave a clear message after all. As Jermaine Joseph Lawler, a former gang member, told the BBC, if someone sees a knife wound or a scar on your face, there's a chance a stereotype is going to be created that you don't mess with me. But with an acid attack, it's so degrading. He added that it's not a knife attack, it's not a gun attack, it's an acid attack. We don't want to kill you, but we want to humiliate you. For criminals and gangs, acid also offers several advantages over knives or guns. For a start, attackers can keep their distance. They don't have to get close enough to risk being injured themselves. Acid can blind someone almost instantly, which means an attacker can hit someone and escape quickly. And if they're searched by the police, it's far less likely for a bottle of acid to look suspicious. Many acids are colourless, they can pass as a drink or a cleaning product or even a bottle of water. And it's pretty easy for anyone to get hold of acid too. That applies to attackers outside of gangs also. There's more than one type of acid out there, after all. Sulfuric, nitric, and hydrochloric acid are the most commonly used in attacks worldwide. These are the same chemicals used for cosmetics, jewelries, cleaning products, industrial supplies, and even illegal drug production. In some countries, particularly across the global south, these strong, industrial-grade acids are easy to get hold of. And in some places, a litre of concentrated sulfuric acid can cost less than $1. And while places like the UK have restricted access to stronger chemicals like undiluted sulfuric acid, they can still be found in vehicle batteries or ordered online. When strong acids are harder to get hold of though, attackers also turn to substances with high alkaline content instead. Alkaline is at the opposite end of the pH spectrum to acid, but in a strong enough dose, it can cause very similar injuries. These alkaline products are scarily easy to find as well. You can buy them in the supermarket. They include caustic soda, bleach, ammonia, drain cleaner, and other household cleaning products. But whatever acid, alkaline, or corrosive substance is used, an attack is serious and it needs to be treated fast, because every second counts. Some victims have applied oil, creams, or home remedies to acid burns, but this is a very bad idea. These products often make things far worse. Acid will keep burning until it's thoroughly washed away. This means that if someone is attacked, the priority is simple: water, and lots of it. The affected area should be flooded with large amounts of clean water as quickly as possible, ideally for at least 20 minutes and sometimes much longer. A small bottle of water is not enough. It takes litres and litres to properly dilute and wash away the acid. Contaminated clothing and jewellery should be gently removed while flushing the area, and nothing, no creams, no ointments, should be applied. Emergency services should, of course, be called immediately. Once the doctors get involved, though, there's still a long road ahead for survivors. In hospital, treatment for acid attacks is often painful and complicated. Doctors have to clean and dress the burns, manage breathing problems caused by fumes or swelling, and monitor for infection. Severe burns won't heal on their own either, so many victims need skin grafts. This is where healthy skin is taken from elsewhere on the body and transplanted over the wounds. At the same time, dead and infected tissue has to be surgically removed. Worse yet, all of this work usually needs to be repeated over and over again. Every stage of this treatment is painful. For these reasons, looking after acid attack victims is incredibly difficult, and in many parts of the world, local medical systems simply aren't equipped to cope with it. On top of that, many victims never report acid attacks to the police. In the global south, this is usually because they don't believe anything will actually happen, or because, worst case scenario, there might be more retaliation. Women in particular often say their cases aren't taken seriously until it's far too late. All of this is where NGOs come in. More and more acid survivor groups are supporting victims, training doctors, funding treatments, and pushing governments around the world to change their laws. And that last point is especially important. In many countries, highly concentrated acid can be brought cheaply and legally, no questions asked. This is why campaigners have pushed for tighter controls, including licenses for sellers, bans on high concentration acid, and mandatory records for every sale. And it seems to be working. In Bangladesh, for example, tougher laws, harsher punishments, and better support for survivors led to a sharp drop in acid attacks. Other countries now actually look to Bangladesh as a role model. The UK offers another positive case study. As we know, acid attacks surged in London during the mid-2010s and peaked in 2017, but since then, the numbers have dropped dramatically. This followed a series of legal changes, including bans on carrying acid in public, new police stop and search powers, and tougher sentencing. Strong sulfuric acid, for instance, is now regulated under the UK's Poisons Act. Carrying acid without a valid reason can lead to prison time. Retailers, meanwhile, are required to report suspicious purchases. Things are looking up. And all the while, not everyone ends up on a tragic path like Mark Van Dongan. Many acid attack survivors have actually managed to build new and relatively happy lives. In recent years, some acid attack survivors have become fashion models. They've even appeared on runways in New York and London. Others, like Katie Piper in the UK, have become public figures. In 2008, Katie was attacked with acid in a crime orchestrated by her ex-boyfriend. She suffered severe burns and was left blind in one eye. Her recovery involved years of surgery and rehabilitation. But Katie went on to rebuild her life in public. She became a writer, an actress, and a TV presenter, and used her platform to raise awareness about the reality of acid attacks. Now, her foundation supports people living with burns and scarring, and also works closely with UK police, government, and advocacy groups to improve protection for victims and strengthen laws around acid violence. Other acid attack survivors around the world have found love, even when it feels the world has turned its back on them. In January 2012, in Mumbai, India, a man threw acid on Ati Taka as she waited for a train. It was the third attack against her in under 2 months, and it was carried out, she says, by men hired after she rejected a marriage proposal. A few months after the attack, her fiancé of 5 years walked away. As she recovered, while volunteering for an acid attack survivor organisation, Thakur met Prashant Pingali, another survivor. Pingali was badly burned while protecting his sister. He actually jumped in front of an acid attack meant for her, and more than half of his body was burned. Like Thakur, his partner also left him after the attack. At first, the pair were just friends, but they talked constantly, supported each other, and eventually fell in love. Tucker later told CNN, "I don't want to be called a victim all my life. If I want to change the situation, I am the only person who will take charge of it. Nobody else can make it happen for me." Now, the happy couple smile in the face of the attack that was meant to destroy them.